This right now, I'm so fucking excited. When you said we're going for a drive, I was like, am I in fucking Hollywood right now? This is epic.
The sun is coming up, are you ready to go? We can take a ride, we can take it slow, yeah.
Welcome back to the Road to Self-Love. It's your boy Paul Fishman, self-love coach and you do you activist. Joined today, wait a second, Stefandros, did I say it right?
Nearly. Pretty close, Stefandros. You were close.
Welcome to the show, Stefandros. I'm really honored to have you here. And the thing that I believe about self-love is that it's all about owning who you are, the devotion to your individuality. So it's important for me to allow you to introduce yourself.
I don't really have a title. I mean, I currently have something called Relational Alchemist. I like relationships. I enjoy playing in the realm of relationships. I enjoy optimizing our relationships, whether it's a relationship to an idea, to our purpose, to ourselves, to our intimate partners, to sexuality, to love, of course. I've got this title, Relational Alchemist. I think I'm in the middle of a bit of a change for that, but we'll go for that for now.
I love it. Tell your origin story, like where did this begin and when did relationship become really exciting for you, but also like where were you before this?
My origin story around relationships have been one that it's been really turbulent and tumultuous for most of my life. I grew up in a very violent family, abusive, physically, emotionally, volatile, very disconnected from father. You know, there was times where he showed love and he really wanted to be there, but most of the time he wasn't, and it was the intermittent aspect of that was very confusing. And so when I brought that that level of understanding to my relationships, I brought that volatility to my relationships. I was mimicking what was familiar to me because I had unchecked, unresolved, unconscious wounding. If it's not conscious, it can't be malleable. So we can't work with it to shift it and transmute it and transform it. And so I was just stuck in this cycle of blaming others. I was blaming my partners. I was not really taking ownership and responsibility for me being the common denominator. But I struggled in intimacy and romance or romantic partnerships because I didn't know how to be other than what I witnessed in my parents.
I'd love for you, if you're willing, to dive a little bit deep into the concept of wounding and like how that can show up and what we can do as just humans to heal.
I'll talk attachment styles for a moment. So it's interesting because the majority of people, it said, you know, it's over 50%, between 50 to 55% have what we'd call a healthy or secure attachment style. And then about, I think, 25% have an avoidant, roughly there, and then so I can't remember what the other stats are on the anxious, but for me, I had a because of the volatility, I had a combination of avoidant and anxious attachment style, which is quite strange. But largely I had an anxious attachment style. And so that was because I wanted father's attention. I wanted his love. I wanted to be approved by him. And what happened was the energy of that and the psychology of that I transferred into my intimate relationships. Why? Because they become mirrors of our most important relationships growing up during our developmental years, our primary caregiver relationships. So if you grew up and you weren't received, you weren't witnessed as a child, you weren't reinforced, you weren't attended to when you really needed it, and that happened often enough, and after a while you made that mean something about your self-worth, how good you are, then you're going to really struggle. You're going to really struggle to be in relationship and not feel nervous like that person's always going to leave you. That person's always going to abandon you. And what happens is usually unresolved wounding attracts unresolved wounding, so they're probably avoidant if you're anxious. So until I dealt with that, then I was able to fall into this greater state of balance and be healthier and more connected in relationship and actually want to be there.
I'm picking up what you were putting down, and that makes sense. And so when you had this realization, like what was that aha moment for you?
I was in a partnership a number of years ago, and she found out that I was being unfaithful, and that just opened up Pandora's box. That really allowed me to start viewing myself and seeing myself from a very, very different place and asking some big questions about why am I doing this? Where is this behavior coming from? Why am I not telling the truth? Why am I living in shadows? What am I so scared of? I wasn't living an authentic life. And so I had to make some decisions about who I wanted to be. And all these memories and experiences started to come through from the past, from my childhood. And so that was a gateway for me to say, I've got to go deeper in my unconscious wounding and into my childhood stuff. And I spent a lot of time on my own in solitude, deliberate solitude, being with me and facing this stuff that I had been ignoring for a very long time. Like, I went deep, man, and I went all in.
I get a lot of messages from women who are being hurt by men who are in that state that you were experiencing, and really like, what can I do as the partner, as the person who wants to support? Like, are there some recommendations that you have for partners of men that are suffering? 3
core things. Now, you definitely start with compassion and non-judgment. Yeah, you have to start with that. Here's the next 2 steps. Healthy boundaries. You have to set healthy boundaries. If the situation is dangerous, or if it's really not serving your values, you've got to say no. And the third part, which actually really may be the first part, but I think it begins with an internal compassion, non-judgment, is you've got to do your own inner work. There's a reason why he's behaving like that. There's a reason why you're experiencing that. And if that's a repetitive pattern in your life, it's telling you more about you than it is about him or the relationship. It's telling you more about you and what you're bringing in terms of the forms of relationships that you're bringing in. You've got to do the work, you've got to set healthy boundaries, and you've got to meet your man with compassion and non-judgment and yourself.
Definitely easier said than done.
100%.
Easier said than done.
100%.
So talk a little bit more about boundaries, because we throw this word around, but a lot of people struggle with even setting boundaries.
Yeah, you've got to know what makes you uncomfortable, then you've got to be able to cultivate the courage to do so. You've got to connect to your self-worth. Because if you don't have self-worth, you're going to minimize yourself and maximize others. Understanding what you value, what your values are, what your likes and dislikes are very important. And then practicing, cultivating courage and speaking your truth with people that you trust. Could be friends, could be family, could be a therapist. You've got to develop that muscle.
For me, that's like self-love. Knowing who you are as an individual and what you honor. But what I would love to do is I'd love to play our first road trip game of the day together.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, so I'd love to play the association game with you. I'm going to say a word, and then you're going to say the first word that pops into your head, and we're just going to go back and forth. So, sex.
Sacred.
Love.
Elusive.
Transparent.
Careful. Meaningful.
Present.
Necessary.
Love. I already said love. Technically, I lost. That was you beat me. I'd love to know a little bit more on a deeper level. What brings you joy every day when it comes to just your life?
So what brings me joy are many things. Being with me, having my silent practice, being in the relationship and growing in the relationship with my wife and the relationship that I'm in there. My friends bring me immense joy. Honestly, man, you might laugh at it. My kettlebells bring me immense joy.
Yeah.
Training, moving my body, being in the ocean. My service. This is bringing me joy, man.
Yeah, I love that. And what I really love is that you're painting this beautiful picture that when you are aligned, which I truly think you are, when you're aligned with your truth and your purpose, everything brings you joy, right? Yes. So you're starting to speak your truth. You are living in this understanding that life is meant for you and it's not happening to you. And then you decided at that point to just take it fully onto yourself to heal. After you healed, like, how was it stepping back into, for quote unquote, the real world?
I think the word healed infers a finality, and I resonate with that. And sometimes we think something is quote unquote healed, but there's more there. As long as our eyes are open and we're breathing and our heart is beating and we carry some level of consciousness, whatever that means to us in this world, I feel growth never stops. It's an ongoing process, and it's an intricate, intrinsic, innate, beautiful part of life.
self-love for me isn't finite. Like a lot of my clients come to me and they're like, okay, after I work with you, I'm gonna love myself always. And I said, well, it's just like, you know, you love your kettlebells. You got to continue lifting them, or it's not gonna, you're not gonna be able to maintain that strength. Time for our next road trip game.
Oh,
so fuck, marry, kill.
Yeah.
Selfless selfishness. Okay. You know, the sacred sexuality, and your alone time practice.
I'm gonna kill selfish selflessness.
Okay.
I'm gonna fuck sacred sexuality, and I'm gonna marry my alone practice.
Beautiful. I love that.
That's. I feel that's the best combination I've got right now.
That's beautiful. I'd love to know, what does self-love mean to you?
Well, let me start with selfish selflessness. It means that you love yourself enough to let others know, and let the world know, and let yourself know when you're not comfortable. But self-love also represents a knowing and an ability and a willingness to celebrate your wins. Self-love is knowing what we want when we need it, and knowing what we need when we don't want it.
So I'm curious, just for fun, like, what's the best mistake that you've ever made?
You know, we don't know what we don't know in the moment, and what we think is often devastating in the moment isn't. You know, what we think is often devastating in the moment is actually the best thing that's ever happened for us. But in hindsight, you know, I would say, with no disrespect to my partner or partners at the time, and being deeply remorseful for the pain that I inflicted through my actions, was my infidelity and my living in the shadow self. That would be the best mistake I've ever made, because of where I am today, because of that, and who I am, more importantly, today.
Where can everyone find you? Pimp yourself out.
So you can find me on stefanosstefandos.com is my website, or my social media handles, Stefanos Stefandos. They're all the, you know, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. If you're in Austin, Texas, we're going to be running free live transmissions and events, physical events. We sort of really give back to community and society, and it's all going to be about love. You know, not only self-love, but intimate relationships, and just a place where people can find community.
Stefanos, thank you so much for joining me on the road. This has been such a pleasure, and if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to go over and follow him on Instagram. Please share, like this, and we'll see you next time on the road to self-love. Bye.